Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the NPTEL module on handling large scale unit level data using STATA. It is one of the unique module so far as social science is concerned, where we will be discussing the length and breadth of understanding unit level data in the Indian context. So therefore, our title is defined accordingly, and this is very much fitted to the MOOC schedule, MOOC program of NPTEL as part of the MHRD initiative. So it is actually mentioned in the Swayam program. So let me give you a background to it, little background to it, in addition to my own field on it. So my name is Dr. Pratap Mohanty. I am a faculty member at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee. I used to deal with unit level data, and particularly called large scale unit level data. I have already handled some of the professional module on this aspect, and particularly processing the unit level data, or you may say extracting unit level data, then processing, then decoding, then mining to some extent, and with the final process we usually go to the extent of interpreting the data, otherwise it is completely meaningless. Especially in a society where there are large number of you may say multiplicity of problems, number of conflict of interest, we are actually puzzled with the correct direction for any particular context to draw certain inferences or conclusion. Especially I am referring to the policy context. So those who are in the ministry or formulating policy, they do require inferences from the actual data. Now question arises, what do you mean by data? How should I start discussing about data? Whether any individual just saying any narratives or just interpreting narratives is called data, or a structure or a systematic presentation is called data. So there are large number of confusions on these particular aspects. So therefore, this particular module called handling large scale unit level data is very trivial in the present day's research, especially for the PhD students, for the professionals, and also for the business classes or the corporate houses. Because let me give you one example in this context. Like suppose one company called FMCG, one fast moving consumer goods segment, they just simply wanted to understand their products to be marketed in a particular location. How do they know that their product has potential demand? Unless and otherwise they do not check the field reality, especially the socio-economic and demographic background of the individuals in that particular locality, they may not come to a conclusion of how much to be sold. Of course, it requires number of extrapolation, interpolation, number of techniques to derive the exact result for interpretation, like elasticities of demand or even supply. So those are little advanced aspects of moduling the data. So now we are actually targeting ourselves to the proper and systematic or structured order of a particular data. so that some interpretation and conclusion can be derived. Now, so therefore, our module is developed, because our module is actually attracting these segment, these stakeholders, because of the fact that handling these unit level data in a single platform is actually missing. There is no holistic approach by any particular institution or by the ministry which gives a systematic direction to the management of this kind of data. Okay. So, even neither in the YouTube platform nor in a single digital platform where students are actually motivated or guided completely to understand the large scale unit level data. So, in this pretext, I wish to introduce the complete direction of this particular course. This course is actually framed as understanding the unit level data, particularly national sample survey of some rounds, and India's Human Development Survey called ISDS. There are 2 rounds, in fact 3, but we will be dealing with 2, and another one is internationally famous. These are actually called internationally acclaimed data, particularly for surveyed in Indian context. Another one is in the context of health issues called NFHS, National Family Health Survey, as part of the demographic health system or demographic health survey data. Now, so the module is actually structured into 8 weeks, and in the 8 weeks we will have different sections, like we will understand first what is called data, what are the different setups, what are the structure of data, then we will understand how to extract the data, then we will also understand how to mine those data, okay, which are the layouts and how those layouts are actually interpreted, how we can filter, if there are some missing values also, how we can simplify those missing values and convert to a right interpretation. Then in addition to do that, we also added certain sections called factor analysis and understanding regression tools, like understanding the linear regression approach and also non-linear regression approach. So, majorly it is confined around linear, and within the linear we will first of all check certain basics before introducing the linear regression and its interpretation. We will identify multicollinearity, we will talk about heteroscedasticity, we will also discuss pooling of the data, we will also discuss panel form of it. Okay. So, probably not probably, actually it is the fact, in our last module is on understanding panel and pooled. So, those are overview of our entire segment. Now, on the very first lecture we wanted to discuss about what do we mean by unit level data. Okay. So, the first class is therefore defined as introduction to data, then our second class will be on unit level data. So, then what do you mean by data? What is data? So, now as you can see from this picture, these are actually going to be used throughout our entire module. So, these are going to be used, like if you see it here, we have ISDS, here we have panel component, here we have extraction, here we have STATA use, and we have NSS data, we have some append issues, we have some merging techniques, normalizing data, so that we can make more representative and can be discussed in different context. Okay. So, now let us talk about data in a different form. So, data is actually called a gathered of information or figures, facts, statistics used for references or analysis. Now, so far as data is concerned, we interpret as called information in numerical form, which are digitally transferred or processed. Data are generally centrally thread and leading with certain forms of information. Okay. So, therefore, it is called central thread of any activity, and data is actually interpreted as numbers, characters, symbols, images, and which can be processed by a computer or with a digital platform. So, we have mentioned here that I mean it is in fact a circular process. It starts with the individual, it ends with the individual. We start with certain information or extract information from the particular individual, there are characteristics from the individual, and we get the raw form, and then so therefore this arrow is important. We find the raw information, then we structure it through certain inputs to the computer, and with certain techniques, with certain tools, the computer generate relevant outputs. From the output we again interpret and narrate the story or narrate the information for certain purpose, and those purposes are actually useful for the consumer, or here we define as users. So, it is a circular process. Okay. So, data starts with the person, ends with the person. Okay. So, this is very very important so far as data is concerned. Now, what else are important on the very first or beginning of our lectures. So, data must be interpreted by a human or a machine to derive meaning, else data is simply meaningless. If you do not derive any meaning out of it, maybe through the human or through the machine, if no systematic meaning or information is derived, it is simply meaningless. Okay. So, it is not called data. So, basically what do we mean here? We actually say it is interpreted as meaningful information. Okay. Now, for example, we have some data may be structured here, you can look at like yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, again 75, 82, any number digits are given. If it is not systematically presented, there are number of question marks. Okay. We do not derive any interpretation out of it. So, none of these data sets actually explain meaning or give any meaning until they are given in a context or processed into a useful form, or if they are not actually discussed correctly, these are not usable. Alright. So, understanding the nature of data is most fundamental for proper and effective use of statistical skills. Here we carry one sample screenshot of the very latest data set. As I just discussed couple of minutes back, that our data why we meant for introducing such a module for MOOC program, because of the case that there are lots of hue and cry related to the recent evidences on employment, and there are a number of questions targeted to the government relating to policy failures, especially on employment issues. It has been argued and debated that the government is going by 45 years low employment. Why should I believe as a researcher? If any information is coming and criticizing the government, not necessarily as a researcher I will simply believe. I have to find a scientific root to it, scientific understanding to it. So, what do you mean by scientific here? Scientific is through the original information collected from the data, collected from the persons. Now, what do you mean by original information? As if if a person, there are two way of defining originality. One is as if the person is directly observing, another is now the person is not directly observing, but there are set of institutions which observe the data and refine the data, interpret the data, so that we can believe their interpretation, because the methodology they adopted is actually very systematic and they have minimized all possible errors. So, errors I mean I am referring to sampling and non-sampling error. The statistical division of our country mainly referred to as MOSPI, which is responsible for collecting the unit level data at a large scale. MOSPI called Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI, and this is one of the best database in the world so far as coverage by its variable, by its number is concerned. Okay. So, and this has been very correctly checked and observed by our different statistical division of the country, and they validate the data by various forms. There are various reasons by which we may believe that this is one of the authentic data source for the individuals. Now, I am referring here the latest data set called PLS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, studied in the year 2017-18, and now this is the database called the most important source for understanding employment scenario in India. And usually the earlier rounds of the data set used to be defined as employment and unemployment survey, okay, and now they have changed the name to PLFS. So, we will clarify those details while we will have a separate sections on NSS, and at this moment I am just introducing why we go for this kind of digits and what those digits represent. So, now you can see this is the snapshot from the original data surveyed by Government of India in the year 17-18 and mentioned in a notepad or in ASCII format. These are called ASCII format or notepad format. This has different byte space. I am just mentioning in dot form different byte space, okay, with certain blanks in between, and the byte space and or the byte space actually represents certain characters of the particular person. Now, these are actually particular individual on the row, different individuals on the column. Usually we consider the information regarding the different variables, okay. And also in added with, usually the beginning characters are defined as unique characters, which is similar in all the individuals or all the blocks. At the later part will explain all those things in detail later, but at this moment I am just introducing. Now, if this is the data set given by the ministry, and if I am a student of PhD, pursuing PhD, I wanted to understand the nature of the labor force in our country, okay. So, how should I go for it? So, our module is going to give you a systematic presentation of all those digits and their byte space. Okay. In our due course of time, we will certainly emphasize everything in detail. Now, on our third lecture actually we are going to discuss the first part of this notepad file. Now, let us understand how to process it, usually which form we do process data. Now, these are actually called raw data, which I have shown you are called raw data, and any operation or set of operations performed using raw data, whether or not by automatic means such as collections, recording, organizations, adaptation, storage or alteration, to convert it to a meaningful information is defined as a useful information. Okay. So, usually there are three pillars of processing. First is input, then processing, then output. Some examples are there in the inputs, maybe of different informations are there. For our understanding, we may have these are the inputs, we may sort it, we may combine, we may enter certain mathematical relationship, mathematical equation to combine or arrange, and accordingly we interpret the data with our outputs. So, information actually is important, systematic information is important. So, therefore, data needs to be turned into a meaningful information, and so the information is the result of processing. Now, for example, if you have a number called 22001992, so does it mean anything unless we divide it and interpret in different order. So, actually just by this number there is no meaning of these numbers without processing. Okay. So, it may be a birthday, it may be composing of an account number, maybe an Aadhaar card number, maybe an ATM card number. So, therefore, systematic presentation is required. Let us have an example. If the raw data composed of 4.9, 5.2 like this and so on, if we put it in certain interpretation with variable called height of the employees in a particular industry, then it gives certain meaning. Just 4.9, 5.2 actually meaningless unless we do not name it or unless we do not code it with a particular information like height. Now, average height may be meaningful, median height might be also meaningful, okay. And if you make it in a group which height has highest frequency, that is also, I mean, if you go by certain modal value that will also be important. So, processing and generating certain output is actually converting to a meaningful information. Now, how we use data? Okay, so data can help us strengthen our argument, and data such as statistics, demographics can help us analyze trends, relationship, especially in economic, social, cultural and biological processes influencing population. Usually these are important for representing our population, and a large segment can be interpreted and discussed. So, data actually transfers abstract information into somewhere meaningful information, and those we have already discussed. So, in the context of unemployment, we are interested to understand their age, their gender, their education, there are blah blah other information. Now, data are actually sometimes or often the case converted in string form, in the raw data, or even after processing also we will see certain string form. What do you mean by string form? It is a combination of numbers as well as letters. So, we have given certain example of string form. These are also called alphanumeric data. Suppose I say I have a dog, and ABC 1 2 3 and so on. These are in string form. I will show you in the exact shape in our STATA software. This is our snapshot from the original data of PLFS and where original data of one of the rounds of the NSS, where the data set gives certain information. If you click somewhere here in a box, it is being clicked or it is clicked. Now, if you want to check on your own, I suggest that you install STATA. You request a demo version from the STATA software. Okay, you get the user for maybe 1 week, maybe for maybe for 1 month. Okay, whichever way they cooperate, you go through that and try to install from the beginning. You will find out this type of layout. Okay, this type of pattern, and this is the data storage pattern in STATA, where if you open that box you will have these informations. Yeah, I have clicked here. Now, the arrow mark shows that it is written as STR30. STR30, STR stands for string, okay, string 30. That means 30 space, 30 character space is actually occupied in that particular box, in that particular column. So, beyond 30 is not allowed. So, now you can see next to that a format is written called 30%, percent 30 is written. That is, out of the total space 30% is occupied with our information as per the data of NSS. Okay. So, other details we will understand and go through it in our successive module. Now, let us understand what other forms of data are there. One we have already discussed called string, second one is called text data. Now, text data are defined as sentences, paragraphs used in a written communication, and these days in different format of research, people call it as metadata. After simplifying the data, processing the data, they express in a form called metadata. Metadata is also called data of data, and these may be though expressed here in a pyramid shape because of their information. If it is text, we have to actually make it in a certain shape, so that we will say that very less percentage of them who talks about this variable. Some of them may talk about document collection. Okay, there may be a larger set related to the last variable. Okay, there are various aspects. Some information of the text data can also be extracted through a web link is given here called you can download the software called WEFT, WFT WEFT, where some basic keys are very useful in getting information related to text data and their research. Now, other forms of data are called image data. Now, it is quite understood to everyone. I do not spend much time. From various form, maybe from pie chart, from bar chart, line diagram, we have lots of information related to image related discussion. Okay. So, accordingly many interpretation could be made. Now, another set is called audio data, and audio data I think you might have seen in different songs in different volumes. It has different amplifying effect, and those frequencies are actually important, and they do control those frequencies. Okay. If the frequencies is in a balanced format, that means your voice is actually recorded very correctly. So, I am just giving a interpretation here. Now, let us come to the discussion on types of data. After understanding different forms of data and its background to data, and why we try to relate to data of large scale in nature, now we are discussing different types and their structure. Broadly, it is divided into qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is largely used by the researcher from the field of social sciences, okay, especially the sociologist and anthropologist, because many informations are not coded or codified. Okay. We cannot have numbers of it. Some phrase of the analysis, like some person is narrating his or her story. Okay. The story itself, the 2-3 lines are actually the code, not just a single number can be interpreted from that particular phrase. Okay. So, the story itself carry a qualitative information. So, for our simplicity we can make it into different forms of data. Now, therefore, we are discussing why qualitative and how these are useful in our analysis, and how NSS or ISDS or NFHS has have dealt those qualitative information. Though they are qualitative in nature, but we will explain in terms of quantitative explanations. Okay. So, that is the beauty of the data set. Now, qualitative data are generally called categorical data or attribute based data, and these are generally, for example, marital status, then belong to a political party, eye color, and gender of a person. Okay. Gender, for example, if I say 1.2, it does indicate nothing. Okay. Gender is 1.2, either we say a complete number 1, 2, or even any number if you say, but beyond that 3, 4, I think it is not defined. But if you interestingly, if you search in Facebook, there are 17 variety of gender defined, 17 varieties of gender defined. Now, look at how qualitative informations are actually discussed. Okay. Not just 2 or 3 transgender, beyond that various forms of gender related information can be defined. Now, let us come to the discussion on quantitative aspects. Quantitative are generally of 2 types, discrete and continuous. So, discrete are generally counted, these are called counted items, and continuous are having certain measured characteristics. So, now if you discuss those things in another approach in through their mathematical properties, we said nominal, ordinal, interval and ratio. Broadly they are called NOIR, nominal, ordinal, interval and ratio, and they are ordered with their increasing accuracy, powerfulness of their measurement, preciseness, wide applications, especially in statistical techniques. Nominal data means names or count, data are alphabetic or numerical in name only, so far as nominal is concerned. Okay. And they are they are categorized without order or direction. There is no such direction so far as nominal is concerned. Okay. Like as I told you for gender there is no direction, male or female, whether male should be coded as 1 or female should be coded as 1. So, there is no clear direction on it. If you are doing it for 1 every time for male, probably you are committing some mistakes while interpreting. So, we must be very careful enough where to give which level of weight. But if you are simply taking code by 1 and 2, but I have taken average of it, actually certainly it will be biased towards 2. Okay. So, average is not at all meaningful. Okay. So, we must be very cautious of coding those data and their interpretations accordingly, and the central tendencies of the statistical technique used in those regard is very important. So, therefore, they are least powerful in measurement with no arithmetic origin or order, direction or distance relationship. Now, this is the example of nominal data. I have already discussed those, you may go through these. So, ordinal data are usual of rank and order, it has a clear ordering of the particular context, like for example, if we put it the ordinal data, this is very useful for inequalities measurement, because it has a clear ordering. The ranking of a person is a order data, wealth of a person if is indicated in a ranking called ordinal data. And so, relative position of those data is very important, and it has no absolute value because it is an ordering, no question of absolute value is defined. So, example of ordinal data is like first, second, third position of a person, economic status as I discussed, so and forth for further understanding. Now, other two categories are interval and ratio data. The interval data is important because there are some data defined to be in interval form, and no absolute 0 is actually defined so far as interval is concerned, since we are sticking to interval. So, no question of absolute 0 is defined. Interval are more powerful than ordinal scale due to equality of intervals. So, I think you might have seen this temperature scale, okay, and especially interval in that scale is very important. And last one to be discussed in this particular first lecture is on ratio data. Ratio data is generally called widest application in statistical techniques. It has absolute 0 value, and 0 has certain meaning to it, and and let us come by example. If we talk about their their height, their weight of the person, and the age of the persons, it is clearly given, and the age of the person is highlighted here very clearly. Now, what kind of scales are important for measurement? It is very indicative, very clearly mentioned which methods of measurement are very appropriate. Now, ratio scale data is concerned, all the methods are important, whereas interval is little better than that of others, ordinal is even better than that of the nominal. So, accordingly you can understand. Let me give you one example here. Average, as I told you, so arithmetic mean is applied in two cases. Similarly, mean and mode you can find out on your own. We will discuss these details in our other explanations. So, metadata I already discussed, data about data. We will take it forward in one of the sections on this. So, let me stop here. Thank you so much.